All right, we're going through this statement put out by Jared Kushner, who's obviously going to be answering a lot of questions before staffers for the Senate Intelligence Committee today. And we're pouring through where he's focused on perhaps where the questioning is going to come from. Casey Hunt, you're reading it. David Ignatius, everyone's pouring through it here. What stands out to you at this point?
Well, Mika, there are a couple things where he denies, essentially, instead of offering a defense or an explanation, he is denying that he did something that is potentially questionable. And I know we touched on this earlier, but setting up that back channel with the Russians, it's been reported that that was his idea. He essentially, in this statement, denies that it was his suggestion. He says that this came at the request of the people with whom he was speaking, that they did not have a way to securely speak to him. He was asked, did they have a secure line into the offices that they were working out of at the time? He says that didn't happen and that it was put off until after the inauguration. So I think that's a potentially important detail. He also denies that he spoke on the phone with Ambassador Kislyak between April and November of 2016. So while the campaign was going on. That, of course, was when he did meet Kislyak in person at that Mayflower Hotel meeting. But he says that later he couldn't even remember the ambassador's name, and he had to ask staffers what the name was so that he could then eventually reach out once the timing was more appropriate during the transition period. There's also a little interesting new tidbit here. He says he received, during the campaign in October of 2016, an email from somebody going by Guccifer 400. And he acknowledges in this statement that that email existed. And he also says he showed it to a Secret Service agent who told him that he shouldn't do anything about it. He should just ignore it. So that tells me that perhaps the committee's asking questions around this, and he wants to say, look, the reason I took no action upon being confronted with this, remember at the time, Guccifer was very much in the news as being an agent of the Russian government potentially meddling in the election. And he essentially offers an explanation and says, look, I asked law enforcement about it. They told me to do nothing. So I did. I think these are some of the key points potentially that you could see him pressed on today.
Yeah. David Ignatius, and then John, we'll go to you. But, you know, just in the past few minutes, some communication with the White House, I'm hearing this is really an effort for full transparency and to really clear his name. Does this raise more questions or help clear things up?
Well, Mika, I think it does give a clear account of the key dates and meetings in question, compared to what we've gotten from President Trump and from some others in the administration. This is relatively straightforward. So it does seem clear that he's being counseled to deliver a testimony. The testimony is today in secret, but here's a fairly detailed, prepared statement, as it were, by Jared Kushner. There are just a couple things that have struck me as I've quickly read through this this morning. First, on the question of his contacts with the Russians after the election, as I read this document, he's saying that the Russian ambassador, Sergei Kislyak, said that he had some special information from Russian generals, from Russian military officials about the war in Syria that he wanted to convey to Kushner. Russia's views about the military situation that was so sensitive that it couldn't go through other channels. So can we have some secret channel? That really is a puzzler, because this is information that presumably he'd want to check with the U.S. side, with Secretary Kerry. There were extensive U.S.-Russian discussions going on at that time. Second point that comes clear in this is he says that his failure to disclose his foreign contacts, his contacts with Kislyak and other Russians, was inadvertent when he first filed this SF-86 form. One of the things he uses to justify that is, gosh, I left off a lot of other stuff, too.
Right.
I had no foreign contacts. For example, he tells us that in this period after the election, he met with Bibi Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. He met with the King of Jordan. He met with the foreign minister of Mexico. He had a lot of secret conversations going on. It's interesting he's using those other secret conversations to justify the fact that he didn't talk about
That's
the
not
others.
making me more comfortable. How about you?
Not a lot more comfortable. The final thing is, this characterizes Jared Kushner as a man who was acted on by others.
Yeah.
You know, his dad wanted him to manage all these contacts, and Kislyak called him up. He didn't do that. So he's portraying himself as the person helping his dad, who others are calling, requesting, bringing to meetings.
I think this point that David's making is very important in both of in the post-election meetings, on the secure communications channel and on the meeting with Gorkov. What Kushner is saying is Kislyak did it. Kislyak suggested the communications channel. Kislyak wanted me to meet this Russian banker. Funnily enough, I mean, both those things may or may not be true.
Right.
But the one person who's not going to be called before to give congressional testimony is Sergei Kislyak. So he is whether this is a true account or a false account, it is a convenient account for Kushner to be able to lay off initiating these meetings and bringing up potentially problematic overtures, putting it all on the former Russian ambassador and sort of saying, hey, you know, I was just listening. I gave him, you know, Kislyak, go talk to Kislyak, who now is back in Moscow.
Yeah, I got to say.
Conveniently left last week.
Yeah,
and
right.
I wonder, does the shucks, I kind of forgot it, I didn't see it, I didn't include it, inadvertent. Does that work when you are an FBI investigator trying to put all these dots together? And the question of Russia and whether or not this President Putin, you know, has some sort of influence over him is prevailing during the campaign. It exploded on our show, quite frankly, when Donald Trump, the candidate, talked so kindly about Putin and could not pull back from it.
Yeah, I think the question I have is which is more dangerous, somebody who knew what they were doing or somebody who wasn't aware of what was going on around them. And I think what we're seeing here is this family-style business is being run like a mortgage company, and yet we're funneling all the national security efforts of our entire country on one guy who admits in his very first page here this was new to him. He had no real experience with him. So I think the more important question for America is, why didn't someone in the Trump team say, hey, let's get an experienced ambassador, a veteran of foreign policy, to work with Jared Kushner so that he's not stepping into a diplomatic meeting, an intel meeting, a military engagement, and an economic meeting with Putin's banker all within the first 4 months.
Good question. Noah?
In the last segment, Josh said a variety of things that were very disconcerting when it comes to this administration's approach to Russia. But the totality of this administration's approach is a little more confusing. That meeting, or the cutting off of support for Syrian rebels, which occurred, decision was allegedly made fewer than 24 hours after they met Putin, is concerning. But you also have an administration that is saying the conflict in Ukraine is a Russian-Ukrainian conflict, not internal, that's shipping liquid natural gas to Poland, that's providing missile interceptors to Poland, that is doing a lot of things that Russia doesn't like. So you have sort of a conflicting image here, and it seems to me that the communications crisis in the White House has to do with how the president feels like he's being perceived on Russia and less to do with what they're actually doing when it comes to Russia.
All right, coming up, can the president be indicted? A newfound memo says yes, and it was written back when Bill Clinton was president. New York Times reporter Charlie Savage has the details on that straight ahead on Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.